But first to the coronavirus crisis and these very tough stay-home laws. Too tough. On Sunday, it's Mother's Day. It's one of those rituals that connect us, that remind us of how we're loved and who we love. It's one of those rituals, to put in the dead language of today, that are so good for our mental health. Calling on your mum, or our age, being visited by your kids, flowers, lunch, hugs, reminding ourselves of the joys of life and the ties that bind, so that we don't feel quite so alone. Now, I mention mental health because one of the, until now, hidden costs of these incredibly tough stay-home laws is the mental health of so many Australians. Now, I've heard anecdotes of more suicides and many more cries for help on hotlines during this panic. But today, research from Sydney University's Brain and Mind Centre tries to put some numbers on it. It claims that its modelling shows our suicide rates will rise by up to 50% because of the impacts of the coronavirus crisis, or to be more specific, because of the bans. And those deaths could be up to 10 times higher than deaths so far from the virus itself. Now, to remind you, we've so far had fewer than 100 deaths from the virus. But this study says that if unemployment does hit 10%, expect an extra 750 people to kill themselves. I'm sorry if this sounds rather brutal, but I think we've got to face some things here. It says that if unemployment gets worse again, 15% say, an extra 1,500 people could kill themselves. And there's also a difference in who dies. This virus overwhelmingly kills the old and the sick. More than half the dead so far were 80 or older. None were under 40. But suicide, that's something you see with a lot of young people as well. Now, of course, this is just modelling, okay? And this crisis has sure reminded us that modelling can sometimes get it very wrong. But that said, this argument that this virus, or our response to it, causes huge mental stress, unbearable mental stress, well, that sure does ring true. And this Mother's Day, look, I feel so sorry for the families that are being kept apart by laws that are now clearly too strict. Now, some states are sensible. Western Australia, South Australia, for instance, they will let up to 8 people at a time go visit mum and dad on Mother's Day. That's great. Queensland won't go quite that far for some reason, even though it's had just 2 new infections since yesterday. But it has relaxed the laws now so that up to 5 people can visit mum on Mother's Day.
From Sunday, we will be allowing up to 5 members to visit a household right across Queensland. So that is great news for families.
But what is safe in Queensland apparently isn't in New South Wales and Tasmania, for instance. Now, don't worry, I'll get to mad Victoria in a second. New South Wales and Tasmania say just 2 people and children can go visit mum. The New South Wales Premier somehow thinks that she doesn't have, between now and Sunday, doesn't have enough time to get around to changing that. I guess that's bureaucracy for you.
But I just want to manage expectations and say, even if National Cabinet does suggest easing of restrictions, which New South Wales will consider very carefully, they won't be able to be made in time for Mother's Day. So the existing arrangements will be there. But as I said, it's still good news for all our mothers out there, because we'll be able to visit them, 2 adults and children at any one time.
Now, I don't get that, because if the Queensland Premier had time to change her mind, then why not the New South Wales Premier? But as always, it's the Victorian Premier that takes the cake for going too far. He won't even look at changing his mind until Monday, the day after Mother's Day, May 11. That's what he always said, May 11, not before then. And again with the hyperbole.
I can tell you what I'll be doing on Mother's Day. I will not be visiting my mum, even if it was lawful for me to do that. She's in her mid-70s. She has some underlying health conditions. She's in good health, but she has some underlying health issues, and I just wouldn't do it. I'd very much like to. I'd very much like to. We do not want to get to the place of temporary morgues.
Temporary morgues? I mean, here we go again. A month or so ago, that Premier Daniel Andrews was so convinced that we'd have mass death that he planned to set up a temporary morgue and hospital at the Melbourne Exhibition Centre. But how many Victorians have actually died of the virus over the past couple of months? 18. Now, I get it. Andrew says his mother is old. She's already got some underlying health issues, and that makes her particularly vulnerable to this virus. So for him, sure, it makes sense. Stay away if that is his choice and his mum's choice. But why should his choice rob, say, my wife of her choice? She's under 60 and she's healthy. She's not in the risk category. Why shouldn't she have a visit from her eldest son if that is her choice? And what about all the other mums out there who are in their 40s and 50s and very healthy? Why can't they decide if a visit from their children is worth the risk? I would bet that is a risk that most would gladly take. I guess they'd take precautions as we do. No kisses, maybe no hugs. But they may say that the danger now is so slight of dying that the love and the company of their children, well, that really is a chance worth taking, because that sort of stuff is actually what makes life worth living. And again, I've got to ask, why is Mother's Day with Mum in Victoria deadly, but in other states fine? Seems to me some politicians have far too much control over your lives now. And as we now have been warned, the price for some people of that control may be far too high, may in fact be deadlier than the virus itself.